No problem.
I want to welcome you to tonight's City Council meeting for Monday, February 10th, 2020. Can I have a roll call, please, Nicole?
Councilmember Biskins.
Here.
Councilmember Mergen.
Here.
Councilmember Novitsky.
Here.
Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
And it's noted that Councilmember Williams is not here today.
All right. Tonight's invocation is by Pastor Bob Lyons from Crestview. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, this is February, the month of cold and snows, and also the month of love. Warm our city with your presence. Guide our leaders with the light of your love. May the decisions we make tonight reflect your good and gracious will for all your people. We ask this in your good name. Amen.
Thank you. If you are able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I'll read our mission statement. Our mission is to provide the highest quality public services. Services will be provided in a fair, respectful, and professional manner that effectively address changing citizen and community needs in a fiscally responsible manner. Tonight's next item is approval of the agenda. If there are no corrections to the agenda, can I get a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nowinski, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. There are no proclamations under item 6, so moving on to item 7 is our consent agenda. And if you could present those for us.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Item A is approval of the minutes of the City Council, and those are for the meetings of January 27th, 2020, the City Council work session of January 6th, 2020, the City Council special meeting of January 27th, 2020, the City Council special meeting of February 3rd, 2020, and the City Council work session of February 3rd, 2020. Item B is acceptance of board and commission meeting minutes, and that would be the EDA minutes of their November 4th, 2019 meeting, the Planning Commission minutes from the December 3rd, 2019 meeting, and the Library Board minutes of the January 8th, 2020 meeting. Item C is the second reading of Ordinance 1659, and that ordinance concerns access to multi-housing unit structures by United States Census Bureau employees. Item D is approval of the business license applications that you had in your packet. And item E is a review of the bills totaling $2,375,126.16.
Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskins, second by Councilmember Nowinski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next item is public hearings, and we have several of these tonight. The first one is resolution number 2020-18, approving a conditional use permit for a brew pub located at 4001 Central Avenue Northeast. And Aaron, you have some information for us. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Aaron Cherpick, Community Development Director. A lot of firsts this evening, just kind of set the lay of the land. We'll be using the projector for presentations related to the planning cases. And typically you would have the city planner addressing you, so bear with me on this first run through. So with that, thank you for the introduction. The first planning case that we have to review is CUP seeking approval for a brew pub to be located at 4001 Central Avenue. It's an application by Railworks Depot and the Columbia Heights Center, the mall owner. Most people know it as the Columbia Heights Mall. So this site is a multi-tenant commercial building that includes retail, restaurants, a child care center, and a transit hub. It's zoned central business district, and a brew pub requires a conditional use permit to operate in this district. The brewery will offer beer that's brewed on site, its own brand, craft beers from other breweries, and a smokehouse barbecue. The tenant bay that they intend to occupy is currently vacant, and most people are familiar with the previous occupant that used to be a charter school that has moved out of the city. So the Planning Commission held a public hearing on February 4th, 2020, as required. And at that meeting, unanimously recommended that the council approve the CUP subject to some conditions. And I'll just go through some of the more important ones, if you will, and if you have any questions, you can certainly ask them of staff or the applicant. But there was a rather well-attended public hearing and several questions by residents in the surrounding area. And there were some changes and slight amendments to some of those conditions that are worth noting. Just for everyone's reference, the brew pub location outlined in red on the site plan within the larger building there. So parking was discussed during the public hearing, and it's important to note that because it's located in the central business district, there isn't a specific parking standard, because technically businesses within this district aren't required to provide any off-street parking. However, the site, as you can see, has several surface parking stalls, 280 currently, with the ability to expand to add about 25 more in the future on the northern corner of the site if needed, by taking some of the playground space for the child care center and then expanding some parking where it currently isn't located. So staff are comfortable with the parking arrangement, and again, there is no specific requirement within this district. Some of the conversations really centered around nuisance characteristics that the area residents were concerned with. Loading and delivery operations behind the building in particular, because most of the tenants are served by an alleyway that's adjacent to residential uses in a couple of areas. So there's some conditions that help mitigate some of those issues, but I think it's worth noting on the front end that although we're going to mitigate some of the nuisance characteristics for the applicant, the brew pub in this case, there are other tenants in the building that are exhibiting those conditions, and they won't be alleviated with this permit. But we'll do our best as we introduce new uses to the site to do exactly what we're doing, help reduce those when we can. So one of the things that's a condition, a poly trash container will be required to help mitigate noise from the trash handling services. We've also asked, this isn't a nuisance characteristic, but a condition of approval would have the applicant installing bike racks towards the front of the building somewhere to accommodate bicycle traffic to the site. An outdoor patio or dining area is not proposed as part of this project, but if it is at a later date, it would require an amendment to the CUP. And when we got to discussing loading and delivery activities, the Planning Commission did add a stipulation of a time frame for those activities to take place between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., which is nice to have that memorialized with the CUP. We also noted that no alcoholic beverages should be allowed outside of the enclosed building, and that customers shouldn't be allowed to enter the east end of the site or the rear of the building. There was also some conversation during the hearing about byproducts and how we dispose of, the stuff that's left over after the malt liquor production. And the applicant will have to submit a narrative to staff for review to help us understand how those operations will be handled. And with that I think is a good summary of the primary issues that were raised, and we would ask that the council move to approve the resolution that does approve this conditional use permit with all of the conditions that were listed in your report and the resolution.
Okay, is there anybody from the council that has any further questions regarding this? I know some of them have already talked to you individually, and anybody have any comments?
I don't have any comments other than there's a question, but it's not related to this. I was going to ask, but
It's not related to the brew pub?
no, it's related to the brew pub. But I was curious as to what their timeline was as far as how, if this is your next step is setting it up, or
I would defer to the applicant to answer
Right,
that question. Yeah.
yeah.
And we can certainly have them approach if you'd like.
Sure, why don't you come forward and,
Introduce yourselves again for those who didn't watch the Planning Commission the other evening.
Hello, I'm William Roberts.
And I'm Denise Roberts.
So your question on timeline, so we're looking at if everything goes smoothly, by the end of this year.
Oh, okay, cool, great. And right now, because when they were talking on Tuesday night, I was the liaison for the Planning Commission. Folks were talking about noise, and I didn't see the screen as clear as I did right now because it was behind me. But they were talking about noise, but I don't see how that would happen if you've got that's the daycare center behind them, between them and the condos?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, New Horizon is on
Right.
that far end, yes.
Yeah, and as far as, just to address some people's concerns with the noise, brew pubs tend to have a different clientele than the old bars did, where people were rowdy and loud and misbehaving sometimes, and I know the brew pubs that I've been into have been reasonable and folks behave themselves, and so I'm not as concerned about the noise as some people had mentioned the other night. So, and also with the space in between, if somebody happen to talk loudly on their way to their car, I don't know how that would affect them. But no, I fully support a brew pub, and I know folks, especially if you partner with the arcade, I think that'll be great. So that's exciting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Willie, could you give us an idea? I know there'd been talk about a patio, outdoor eating area. When would you be planning to put that in if you expand that way? And where do you think it might go?
That, I think, is a conversation we have to have with the building owner as
Okay.
well for that to happen in this space.
Okay.
And what possibilities that there could be for that. That is not in year one.
Okay.
But it will be a future, something we'll talk about in the future.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Excited to see you get it started and going. I know the community's really been wanting a brew pub, and thanks for, making it us.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is our first one, so it is, you have high we have high standards for you. And we appreciate that. So, thanks for adding the barbecue too. I really enjoy that idea. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody from the public that has any comments or questions regarding the brew pub, please come forward, and there's a form to fill out, and state your name and address for the record. So,
Dwayne Morrell, I've got my name on another issue. Isn't there a state law, or aren't there other ordinances where alcoholic beverages have to be so many feet from a school?
Aaron, could you answer that one?
Not a state law, and there isn't a city ordinance for proximity for a brew pub to any other use, school or daycare or otherwise. So
Seems to me that other communities have done that. I remember.
Okay, I could actually clarify that one. A daycare does not qualify under that ordinance,
Okay,
so,
all right, thanks.
thank you.
Hi, Rachel, 4448. Tyler Street. I love this idea. It's close to my house. I could bike there. I've had William and Janice's barbecue and the beer, and it's amazing. So I'm really looking forward to it. Not so much the arcade because I'm terrible at that. But for our city, there isn't a lot of nightlife, and I think we usually end up going out of the city or going to Northeast, and this would be great for Columbia Heights to keep some of that options in town. So I'm in favor of it as I live in the neighborhood nearby. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak regarding the brew pub? Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearing and waive the reading of Resolution 2020-18, there being ample copies?
Move to close the public hearing and waive the reading of resolution number 2020-18, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskin, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then I need a second motion then.
Move to approve resolution number 2020-18, approving the conditional use permit for a brew pub to be located on the property of 4001 Central Avenue Northeast, subject to certain conditions of approval.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskin, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. You have the blessing. Thank you. The next one is resolution number 2020-19, approving a conditional use permit for an arcade located in 4001 Central Avenue Northeast.
Well, Madam Mayor, thank you for the introduction. The location should look familiar because we were just talking about the brew pub in this vicinity. So same strip mall, right next door to the brew pub. I'll put in the brew pub in red and then the arcade proposal in blue. Starcade LLC and again the building owner Columbia Heights LLC have applied for a conditional use permit to allow an arcade at this location. Just to set a little bit of the context about the type of arcade, it's a retro-themed arcade that would provide video games from previous generations, 80s, 90s, and try to target an age cohort between the ages of 35 and 55. So I want to set the theme as far as it relates to kind of the new arcades that various communities are experiencing in our region, so that we have that in mind when we go to review it. So again, it's a multi-tenant building. It's in the same vicinity as the brew pub, previously occupying the space by the charter school that has vacated. And just to go through some of the considerations that were discussed at the planning commission level, there was a requirement for poly trash containers because of some of the same nuisance characteristics that are anticipated in the rear of the house. Bicycle rack consideration as well of 4 bicycle spots for this proposal. And then the same loading and delivery stipulation was applied to this CUP for loading, delivery, and trash handling to take place between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. There's a condition for arcade noises that should not be audible at the property line of the subject site. That's with the residential properties in mind. And then again, no customers should be leaving the building to the rear or the east of the site. Beyond that, there was a conversation about how the two uses integrate. So the brew pub in red, arcade in blue, a potential future connector in the yellow arrow there. And the reason that we spent a great deal of time talking about this is because arcades currently are prohibited from having alcohol on the premise per the city's licensing and the CUP requirements. So we know that we need to take care to have a clean break between the two uses so that exchange isn't happening. However, it is a desire of the arcade to approach the council at a future date with a text amendment that would amend the city's ordinance and allow for alcohol to be introduced to that property. But that is a conversation that we would have at a later date once the city would receive that application. So right now we can't have them mixing, and staff is comfortable with this arrangement. The police department has been read in on this, and we've had a conversation with the police chief, and he's comfortable that the licensing would allow us the opportunity to revoke anything if there's behavior that's inconsistent with the requirements of the license or the conditional use permit. From staff's perspective, I think there is a path towards that integration and allowing the alcohol to come into the arcade space. They have a desire to host corporate events. There's private party rooms integrated into the facility, and they do want to bring that into the project at some point. But right now, it's important to make that distinction and let everybody know that we're not to that point, and that we're taking measures to safeguard against any issues that we think could arise.
My one question on that, I assume we haven't had an arcade in our city since the 70s because that ordinance seems to be fairly old. But in addition to that, if they're talking about, I think it was Paul, right, was talking about having corporate events in party rooms, would the party rooms, since they're separate from the gaming area, would they be allowed to have alcohol and food at that place?
Currently, as the license is written, they wouldn't. So it's just a straight prohibition on the premise of any arcade. And you're correct in saying that we haven't had an arcade ever to staff's knowledge, so this license has not been applied, and it certainly is from an era where arcades were functioning differently.
Because I have been to even Chuck E. Cheese, and Chuck E. Cheese does allow that. So, yes.
Madam Mayor and council members, just so you're clear, there's also some liquor licensing requirements that come into play here because they have to have a licensed premises, and right now that would not include the arcade area or any rooms outside of the existing brew house that they have. And same with the addition of any outside patio or dining area. If they want to do that and they want to have alcohol there, they need to come back and redefine the premises for their liquor license to include that.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments from the council?
No, I think it's a great idea, though. It's a great concept. I'm sure it's going to be a busy place, so.
Right. Paul, did you want to come forward and introduce yourself to the public? I know you were at the planning and zoning meeting, but tell us a little bit about your history maybe and.
Sure. Yeah, no. So Paul Sarnin, 66 Monarch Way, North Oaks. Me and two other co-founders are looking to open this business here, and we're really excited. We've met the brew pub owners and thought there might be a great overlap in our customer base. So it was kind of a natural extension for us to kind of explore this opportunity. Obviously, one of the demands that we're hearing from corporate businesses is another opportunity for them to bring their workers for corporate events and have events at our location instead of us taking our arcade machines out to them. And so, for example, we would bring machines in previous history out to event centers and things like that. This allows us to stay in one spot and host people like Target and your Medtronics, your Fortune 500s. Their groups love to come and play video games. The approach moving forward is to work with the city council on that liquor option in the future, and so that's kind of what our desire. We just want to be very transparent what our needs are going to be, and we're going to probably be one of the top 5 classic arcades in terms of size in the country day one. So it will bring a lot of business into the area.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
The question, what do you hope to have your capacity at for a number of people that can be in your business?
I don't have that in front of me, but I believe it's north of 400.
Wow. And the rooms where the events would take place can hold how many people?
Sure. Here's the pointer. So if you look at the plans right here as they're sketched out, we've got party rooms that are. We can either make it one large party room. We'll have movable walls so we can actually split them apart. I believe the occupant, and we'll also have a mixture. This is a pin where we're going to be placing our pinballs, and so there will be tables located in here as well. I believe, and don't quote me on this, I think roughly around 100 people in terms of the party room capacity per code.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a public meeting, so if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak in regards to the arcade portion of this, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anybody want to come forward and speak? Last chance? Okay, then can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Nowinski and a second by Councilmember Biskins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I need a motion to approve.
Move to approve Resolution 2020-19, approving the conditional use permit for an arcade to be located on the property at 4001 Central Avenue Northeast, subject to certain conditions of approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Biskins, second by Councilmember Nowinski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Congratulations. Looking forward to both of those. The next item is resolution number 2020-20, approving a preliminary and final plat for a 29-unit assisted living facility on the property located at PID 35-30-24-43-0125, unassigned address known as the remnant parcel. This has come forward many times.
Yes.
Thank you, Aaron.
I think we're finally there. Madam Mayor, the introduction was descriptive enough to, I think, skip the report. Thank you for that. So the remnant parcel, as staff are familiar with it, is on the screen, outlined in red. It's just south of Husett Park at the intersection of Huset Parkway and Jefferson Street, and Public Works identified for a reference as well. Contractors Capital has applied for a preliminary plat, final plat, and site plan review for the development of a 29-unit assisted living facility at this location. The site plan is actually an approval that takes place at the Planning Commission level, but the plat is what we're here to actually take action on. But I think it makes sense to go over the broad view of the project quickly to put the context into place. So a little bit of history. This site is what's left over after the broader redevelopment plans of this industrial area that included that final project in 2016 when the Legends of Columbia Heights was developed by Dominion. The applicant had previously received approval for a 3-story 75-unit project on this site at the end of 2019. However, after soil testing was completed, it was determined that the site could not accommodate that 3-story building. And now we're to present day where the 29-unit facility, it looks like this. That's a floor plan, a mix of memory care and assisted living units again, and that rendering is of the front of the building that would be facing Jefferson Avenue. It should also be noted that the plat that was approved in 2019 was not recorded with the county, so we don't have to do anything except take care of the new plat that's in front of us. So a little bit to note about the plat, it's pretty straightforward. It's an outlot, so we have to plat it. The project proposal or the plat layout is outlined in red, and the developer is actually going to clean up an issue for the city by dedicating this right-of-way that's part of the parcel currently outlined in yellow that extends into the street and the roundabout. So not sure how that happened with the realignment of this redevelopment district, but this is an opportunity for us to rectify that with the replatting of the property. Just a little bit site plan, just to give you a reference for kind of how the site lays out, highlighting access off of McKenna, so off of a private street rather than the city's public streets, Jefferson and Huset Parkway. So there's only one access point, and part of this plat consideration is that the developer does have to demonstrate to the city that that access is approved. They have submitted HOA documents for the townhome indicating that that is an eligible use. We just need the city attorney to verify that before we would go to record the plat. So with that, we would ask that the council does move to approve the resolution that does approve the preliminary and final plat with the conditions stated in the report.
Does anybody from the council have any comments or questions? Connie, you were at the meeting. I don't know. Anything you want to add?
Well, because they did the site plan, we're doing the plat, so I did have a question, but I thought I'd be able to ask it now. But is the builder here?
Yes.
I just had a question about, I know he asked me during the EDA, I think I asked it during the EDA meeting if they were planning on putting solar panels on the building, and I think they weren't, their answer was no, but I wanted him to explain to the people here and the folks listening if he could give an answer as to why, just so the folks can hear about it and that it was asked. But this is in reference to the site plan, not to the...
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Wade Tollefson, Contractors Capital Company. Solar panels it's just not anything that we had planned on. I guess it's the first time I've heard that question come up. We've done a few of these buildings between us and our partner Sweet Living, and we've never incorporated a solar panel into it. So it was just never part of any of our plans.
So how do you plan on keeping your energy costs down or your energy use down?
The building, the slab will have radiant heat throughout the whole slab, which is a very efficient way and more comfortable way for our seniors for the heat. So the whole slab will be radiant heat, all the rooms and the corridors and everything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Councilman Mergen?
Just one question. Do you got enough parking for everybody so we don't end up with the fiasco we had up there on 47th and Grand?
Yeah, we definitely have enough parking for a building of our size, because most of our residents don't drive. There's only a few staff members on on at any given time. Even on a Saturday where we're gonna have visitors, you're maybe looking at, 10, 12, 14 cars, at the max amount. We have 25 parking spots and 2 additional handicap spots. So parking, we exceeded by probably double of what a standard for a nursing home or assisted living type facility would have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions from the council, this is a public hearing. If anybody from the public would like to come forward and ask questions or make statements regarding this project for this 29-unit building, please come forward.
Hi, Cliff Johnson, 1027 43rd and a half Avenue. My question is, I don't know if you guys can answer this or not, but I was wondering, how do they determine how many people they have on call who can help with lift assists? Because that seems to be a real big problem in the city. Our fire department gets really called a lot for that, and I'm wondering what in-house they have to help alleviate not being dumped on by the fire department for that problem.
Do you
I'd have
that
to
answer?
defer to the applicant
Okay.
to provide comments
Wait,
on
do you
that.
come forward and answer that question, please? Thank you.
Thank you again. So if I understand the question correctly, so we will have full-time staff. It's actually, we hire, as the building owner, we hire all the management companies, Sweet Living, and that they do this full-time. So there'll be an executive director and full-time staff. And so if there's emergencies, there is people out there full-time to take care of the residents. That's part of their live-in package. Obviously, if in any emergency, if we need to call a hospital or ambulance, they would, but they wouldn't rely on a fire department to take care of it. They are trained nurses and staff and orderlies at all times.
So they are trained to pick up somebody if they fall?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
We have other facilities in the city where their staff is not allowed to pick up the people, and so we're working with them to kind of change that at this time, but it is true that a lot of our emergency calls go to lift assist, so that would be very helpful if you have staff that actually can do it themselves.
We have staff that can do it, and we have state-of-the-art equipment as far as lifts and stuff like that, and wheelchairs and stuff to get these people around that need additional care. Again, as part of their packages, if they need care, that's part of what it comes with their rental rates.
Yeah, well, this is if they fall.
Right, yep, but that's what I mean. So they're paying to have that people on staff.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions regarding this project? Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Move to close the public hearing and waive the reading of resolution number 2020-20. There being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskin, second by Councilmember Immersion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then I need a move to approve.
Move to approve resolution number 2020-20, approving the preliminary and final plat as presented, subject to certain conditions of approval.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskin, second by Councilmember Immersion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, and then moving on to item D, resolution number 2020-21, resolution number 2020-22, and resolution number 2020-23, approving easement vacations, preliminary plat, and final plat for property located in the city of Columbia Heights, Minnesota. And I assume this is regarding the additional triangle, correct?
No,
No,
sorry,
I'm
Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
No, that's okay. So yes, the project that we're discussing next actually includes the first reading of ordinance 1660, which I'd like to roll into this presentation because it's completely related to that conversation. So although the first grouping of resolutions deals with platting and easement vacation, everything that we're discussing here carries on to the next item, and we would move if you are so inclined into that ordinance reading directly after this. So yes, a lot to unpack with this, so let's get right to it. The property outlined on your screen there is 3989 Central Avenue, and it's a site that's been vacant for several years. The city purchased the building in the summer of 2019, which most people commonly refer to as the Northeast Bank Building. We're at the intersection of Central and 40th Avenue for reference. So there's a vacant 6-story office tower and a municipal parking ramp on the site. And the project area also includes a single-family lot that was acquired by the city a number of years ago where a home was torn down, and that site now serves as a stormwater retention basin. So the proposed project includes a complete redevelopment of this site, and that includes removal of the office tower, the plaza structure, and the parking ramp. The adjacent land uses, we've got Central Business District to the north, west and south, and then single-family residential to the east. Let me get into primary project components. So it's a vertical mixed use that's being proposed, and the vehicle that we use for that is a PUD. So I'll get into land use specifics a little bit further down, but we've got within the project, I should say, we're contemplating a 21,000 or nearly 21,000 square foot new city hall, 3,400 square foot cafe and coffee shop, and 265 market rate residential rental units with best in class amenities and underground parking. So to get there, let's just kind of set the tone for this is what the project looks like. This is a view from Central Avenue looking north, east essentially. And just highlight a few things. That's the city hall space on the floor level on Central Avenue. The cafe space outlined in yellow to give you the context of the project that we're talking about. So the land use approvals that are required with this get a little bit complicated, and I'll try to unpack that. We've got some approvals this evening as well as on the 24th of February. But the primary analysis is completed through the Planned Unit Development District or PUD process. And what that amounts to is a rezoning of all of these properties into its own zoning district. So the planned unit development offers the city a chance to create a zoning classification that's specific to the site and the project that's being contemplated. Within that, there's what we call a planned unit development district plan, which essentially is the site plan. So if you think of everything that we look at in a site plan on a regular project, that's our planned unit district plan. We actually have to approve that district plan at another public hearing at the end of February on the 24th because of the way that our city ordinance is written for this planning vehicle. Then when we get into preliminary and final plat and easement vacations, that's really just cleaning up the underlying issues that we have with all of these different parcels. There's 5 underlying parcels, a number of easements that we either need to vacate or vacate and replace to establish easements that'll work for the project. But all of the real heavy lifting takes place through the PUD ordinance amendment. When it comes to the comprehensive plan, the comp plan guides this project area for transit-oriented development or TOD development. TOD development seeks to promote high-density mixed-use development along our primary transportation corridors. Some of the key guiding principles for this specific site, which is very clearly identified in the comprehensive plan in several sections, but a lot of time was spent into creating the elements that the city would like to see at this location. And the comp plan stipulates that uses should include retail, office, restaurants, and other commercial uses with housing. So that we deliver on all accounts there. Buildings along the east side of Central Avenue should have front walls that abut the sidewalk edge, similar to those on the west. Parking for multifamily should be underground or covered, and redevelopment plans should include public gathering spaces such as plazas. And there's actually a plaza that's integrated into this plan that we'll highlight a little bit further on. So getting into the PUD, the district plan, or the site plan, if you will, just a few things to consider from a global perspective. Setbacks being one. There aren't any specific setbacks for this district. The underlying district is the mixed-use development district, and neither the mixed-use or the planned unit development district have setback requirements. The setbacks that are being contemplated are consistent with the existing conditions the ramp being to the property edge as well as the bank building. In this arrangement, the city hall space is actually being pushed a little further back from central than the current building. So I'll just explain the component areas from a plan view quickly. Oh, sorry, wrong way. So City Hall outlined in blue for reference. And we'll talk about parking as we move through the space and highlight each space. So the site in total provides 346 parking stalls across all uses, and we divide it and use a shared parking arrangement to exchange between the City Hall use and the residential use predominantly. So I'll highlight some of those areas. The area outlined in yellow is showing 30 dedicated space for City Hall visitors and cafe users. This area will have a controlled access with electronic monitoring off of 40th Avenue. You can see a two-way drive aisle and entry off of 40th to serve this space. Again, for predominantly City Hall related and residential visitors to the City Hall space, as well as 8 spaces dedicated for the cafe. There is not a standard for City Hall spaces within the code. Staff has looked at our current space and demand, and that's what we've modeled this after daily use and are comfortable with this arrangement. When it comes to, City Hall employee parking. So employees won't park in the 30 stall outline space in yellow. The employees will be given spaces generally outlined in green, although it might fluctuate a little bit in this space, in this area, which is resident only and City Hall employee. So during the day, City Hall employees will utilize this space, and in the evening, residents will utilize the space. Employees can walk through this corridor through a secured access and into the building, predominantly in this vicinity, and this will be electronically controlled only to people that have access cards to get into that space. Beneath this floor plate, and we'll show it on a subsequent slide, is an underground parking lot that solely serves the residential use, and it's entered through a ramp on the eastern edge of the property. So the shared parking arrangement between the City Hall employees and the apartments is a type of shared arrangement that is emphasized, through our planning for this district, and we encourage it, and staff think that we'll be able to manage that effectively. Cafe spaces will likely designate right near the cafe for practical purposes, so outlined in purple. And then the red outline shows the overall area that would be resident and employee flex space. So just a little bit about the requirements for parking stalls related to the district. Multifamily districts require 1 stall for each bedroom unit, for each 1-bedroom unit, and 2 parking stalls for each 2-bedroom or larger unit. I think I've got a breakdown of this. So here's just a slide of the underground parking for reference. So underground parking, there's a basement essentially to the fullest extent of the property boundary, more or less, covering the entire site with a basement. So again, 1 stall per 1-bedroom unit and 2 per 2-bedroom unit. Under that equation, the total required number of resident parking stalls is 325. The site plan provides 316 resident stalls. The zoning ordinance in this area for mixed use, the underlying district, allows for a reduction of up to 30% of those required stalls if the site contains bicycle or transit or pedestrian access that's direct, or again, shared parking agreements between uses. Since we have both of those elements, we can afford that flexibility to the site. And in theory, with a full 30% reduction, you could be as low as 228 after applying that full 30% and have an 88 stall surplus. We're well below that, or significantly less than that, with the 316 proposed residential stalls. There's one caveat to what's being shown on the site plan and what we'd like to seek approval for through the PUD. We'd like to have authorization to approve a total of 310 required resident parking stalls to allow a buffer that would accommodate final construction plans, because we're not sure if some of those stalls will be lost as things change in the parking area related to HVAC equipment placement. It's likely that we keep the 316 or add a few is what's likely, but because we memorialize the minimums and maximums through our ordinance, we wanted to provide a flexibility to accommodate construction changes downstream and not bring the project in at a later date to make that adjustment. Even if we go with the 310 resident dedicated stalls, that represents a 5% reduction below the 30% allowed by code. It's a lot to talk about parking, I know, and we've got more. So when it comes to multifamily parking standards, there's also a ratio to consider for compact stalls. So the site plan shows a total of 200 compact stalls for resident parking. In parking lots with more than 300 spaces per code, up to 40% of those spaces can be designated and clearly marked as compact. The site plan is proposing 63% of those be designated as compact. And in conversations with the developer, it's consistent with other projects that they've built in the area for multifamily. And the stalls on the main floor that employees use to exchange with residents are mostly full-size stalls. So drive aisles are all compliant at 24 feet wide. There's just several stalls that are compact to, again, get as many spaces as we can into the project in an efficient manner. The stalls that serve purely residents are all full-size and compliant, and no compact stalls are in the 30-stall bank. Previous plan iterations had included a higher amount of compact stalls on the top level, and through a redesign of column placement and just tweaking the layout, they were able to eliminate 25 of those, so a significant improvement, we think, to where we've landed today. So again, we'd like to build in a buffer to this if anything should change with the final construction plans, and approve a total maximum of 210 of the compact stalls, or 66% total. And that flexibility can be afforded through the PUD. So the next standard that we butt up against in the mixed-use district is density. So in order to accommodate the mixed-use development and high-density residential that is being contemplated, we'll need flexibility through the PUD zoning as well. So the mixed-use district as it stands allows for up to 30 units per acre with certain conditions. That ratio, if applied to the project, would allow for 66 units total. Staff, through some research, believes that this standard is unusually strict for a municipality like Columbia Heights, and out of alignment with Metropolitan Council planning guidelines for TOD development specifically. So in 2011, Metro Transit designated Central Avenue all the way through Columbia Heights as a high-demand urban transit way corridor. That designation calls for the eventual implementation of a bus rapid transit or BRT line along that corridor. And one of the primary features of that designation being the Columbia Heights Transit Center located just across the street. The Metropolitan Council, on top of that designation and recommendation, recommends residential density ranges for urban center development sites, which we are classified as urban center, within 1/2 mile of a BRT, and we have a future BRT right along the project. The maximum or the minimum recommended density is 40 units per acre, up to 75 plus with no cap. So when we take into consideration all of the density requirements that we see emerging in the region, I think it's definitive that the mixed-use underlying zoning does not accommodate that request. And we would seek approval of a maximum total, again, of the 265 residential units, which accounts to 116 acre per unit density ratio. And that can also be offered through the PUD. I think it's worth noting a little bit of history on PUD within the city at this time. So previously, the city had a long history of PUD zoning through the 70s, actually. And then we did away with it sometime in 2001 when we adopted an entirely new city code. and its replacement was the mixed-use district. PUD was brought back in 2018 for this very reason, that mixed-use zoning classification wasn't meeting the needs of the projects that were being identified in the comprehensive plan, certainly, and along the transit corridors within the city, and that's where our mixed-use districts are primarily located. So that shift, I think, is important context within this broader conversation. So easements and plats, quickly, the underlying parcels and plat boundaries would be wiped clean with this, and a new singular parcel would be created to accommodate the entire project area. We have some easements that we have to deal with as part of that process. Just to let you know how messy it is, there's the bank building parcel, the plaza parcel is separate, the parcel for a part of an alleyway and a connector that connect the two buildings is separate. The ramp building is separate, and then finally the Gould Avenue lot. So it's a mess. We're working through a lot of these considerations with our council to find a way to register all of these properties first and foremost, and then provide the basis for what would be a condo plat and a common interest community arrangement. So to do that, we need to start fresh with what ends up being this. So parcel boundaries identified in red, essentially linking the corners of the boundary of all of the parcels. And we have some easements. The proposal to, oh, sorry.
I just have a question. When you said the 5 parcels weren't registered, were they supposed to be registered?
So it's a mix of what we call registered and abstract properties. So registered property means that it's an abstract property that's gone through a prescriptive process with the county to clear up any title issues and give it a condensed legal description and or certify that it's registered and it gets a higher classification as being, I guess in this case, more development ready. We have a mix of abstract and registered.
So you're basically talking about clearing the titles to make sure there's no
more or less,
liens
yeah,
or any
absolutely.
problems with it. Okay.
And merging, so everything is registered and clean and ready to transfer.
Okay. Thanks.
So the easement outlined in blue is one of the 2 that we propose to vacate. We will reestablish an easement in this same area to accommodate a water main and some other utility infrastructure. So the darker crosshatch would be the new easement that would take place in that area. But to do that, we would vacate the entire easement and then bring back an easement that accommodates the changes. And then the alleyway outlined in green is an easement that runs through in between the bank building and the parking ramp. So just quickly on access and loading, so some comments. We've got 2 entrances off of 40th again, outlined in the red arrows. So resident entrance and then a city hall entrance. Cafe loading area for small deliveries outlined in red, so small vehicles that could unload into the cafe space. Non-residential uses that are less than 5,000 square feet, which the cafe is, do not require a designated loading area. But we just wanted to at least have a conversation about how we would accommodate that with the developer. Additionally, loading and deliveries for the cafe could also take place from the primary leasing office entrance on Gould, outlined in blue. That will also be the location that FedEx and UPS and mail come into that facility, as well as daily deliveries for the apartment use. There'll be a couple of parking stalls integrated into that spot as well. The circulation pattern for bigger delivery and loading movements takes place along the green outlined path. That's the turning movement for delivery trucks that are unloading for resident move-ins. So resident move-in activities are all internal into the site in the structured parking area. They can enter on the east entrance and then exit on the west entrance on 40th. There is a controlled access here that segregates these 2 parking areas, and we still need to work out with our developer partner how we can utilize this same turning movement for other significant deliveries that come into the area that are serving the city hall or potentially the cafe. But once we figure out the management and operations of that, it's actually a very efficient maneuver, if you will, and keeps everything significant off of the streets. So just a little bit about landscaping, back to the pocket park that we discussed previously, the plaza outlined in yellow along Central Avenue. It's a space that's been designed to really create an active Central Avenue and capture cafe, coffee shop users. The City Hall Council Chambers is adjacent to the pocket park. Residents from the building, we envision, would congregate in that space, and it would provide a very active corner, which has been a design element that we've looked at throughout the entire process. We anticipate that there would be benches and tables and other plantings in that area. There's also a dog park programmed on the eastern edge of the site off of Gould. It's a resident-only amenity at this time, but outlined in the yellow area on the site plan. And then whatever else that's left over, we have a little bit of room around the periphery to squeeze in as many plantings as we can, as well as some streetscape elements along Central Avenue that may very well serve as crash protection for vehicles as well.
I have a question, but I don't know if it's for this meeting. We have 2 more meetings or 2 more segments of this, right, coming up?
One more.
One more, and that one deals with the site plan itself?
So it's all of these same elements, Councilmember Biskins, and because these are so interconnected with the PUD ordinance that we have the first reading for tonight, we wanted to go through all of this, but it would be the exact same elements that make up the PUD District Plan. And
I don't know if this question, I think the question might relate. It's about, because it came to me when I was looking, you have the 2 townhomes, which I think are quite unique, and it's interesting on the first floor, and they're right next to the garage door that's going to be opening and closing all day. I'm wondering how much soundproofing they're going to put between the townhome that's next to the garage door. I would think they've thought about it as far as making sure that the residents aren't going to hear it opening and closing all day, but I don't know if that question applies for here or if it applies to the next meeting.
I think it's fair to discuss that now so we could get it out of the way, and I would defer to the applicant, but it is a good observation.
If you want to finish your presentation, we can do it at the end.
I think that'd be great. So just some miscellaneous other items to cover. Utility connections, of course, will be reviewed by the city engineer, Public Works, and the fire department. We know we have a lot of work to understand where all of the easements need to go in this regard, and we're unraveling that nest on a daily basis. So drainage. The utility plan shows a stormwater feature on the eastern side underneath the dog park. It's in for watershed review right now. Again, Public Works Director, City Engineer is closely working with the applicant to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements of the watershed.
One thing I read in the report is that they're going to have controlled drainage from the roof down into the storm drain, which I think is a nice element that they're adding to that.
Right, so the roof will be designed to accommodate the heavy bounce or the rate control. So it'll hold water just intermittently, or slow it down rather, before it reaches the stormwater retention and filtration. But rate control and not quality. Quality control happens downstream through some features that are still being designed. Building and design materials, the exterior is generally in place. It consists of glass, brick, cast stone, fiber cement, and metal, so high quality architectural quality that adds value to this project. We do know that the City Hall portion in particular is going to receive some additional refinements and embellishments. We do know that we want to find a way to make the City Hall space stand out from the rest of the building and create a cohesive campus feel between the library and this site, for example. So that work is still underway, but we're happy with where we're at right now. There isn't a detailed lighting plan that's been submitted, but any exterior lighting would be reviewed by staff at a later date for review for compliance. Because we're on 40th Avenue, we need an Anoka County review. It is in with Anoka County, the plat, the layout, the site plan, and we will be forwarding them a traffic study shortly that's been completed by the developer. Early comments, no significant concerns. Happy to see the curb cuts reduced from 40th down from 4 to 2 in this arrangement, and we don't anticipate a lot of issues other than coordinating permitting for any work that would touch their right-of-way along 40th. VinDOT's in the same classification. They've actually completed their review of the project and provided comments that were included in the Planning Commission report. Nothing significant. There are no accesses being contemplated onto State Highway 65, but we do need to be cognizant that we'll be in their right of way and have to abide by all of the appropriate permits. Just worth highlighting amenities in this project for context. So there's an amenity deck on the second floor outlined in purple. These are the best in class amenities that we talk about with a project like this. Pool deck, grilling stations, all sorts of outdoor activity that can take place on that second floor deck that also integrates with some of the amenities outlined in blue, a club room, a fitness center, and other interior amenities that spill onto that broader amenity deck. Sixth floor plan, so more or less everything above the second floor and floors, 2 through 5 look very similar. The outline in red is a sky lounge, so there's an amenity on the 6th floor with downtown views. It's a entertainment suite in yellow, and then an outdoor patio on the southwest corner of the building on the 6th floor. And then just again for reference, here's that rendering. We're standing at Fairview Health more or less, looking southeast, City Hall outlined in red, Sky Lounge, and then another shot from Central Avenue looking northeast, the Dairy Queen there in the foreground, City Hall, Sky Lounge, Cafe, just to provide perspective for the project. I think that's it for slides. And so this evening, what we're specifically addressing are the easement vacations and the preliminary and final plat. That's what we're asking action, and then the first reading of ordinance 660, which memorializes the specific development standards, and the deviations from the underlying district that are worth noting are the two. It's the density at 116 units per acre, and then the parking, memorializing the parking minimums and maximums, so the maximum number of compact stalls and the minimum number of residential stalls. The two really kind of important elements of that ordinance, if you will. But I would ask to take action on the easements and the plat, and then the first reading of the ordinance, and then on the 24th, we would be back for the planned unit development district plan, another public hearing that's been advertised in the paper, as well as the mailing radius requirement, and then the second reading of the ordinance.
Okay, anybody from the council have any comments or questions regarding this project?
I just had the question
Go
about
ahead,
the garage,
Councilmember
because should we wait until the next meeting? As far as the soundproofing between, maybe they can answer the soundproofing between the garage door and the townhome that's gonna be right next to it.
I think we can talk it through.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have then.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Excited for it to get going and to break ground and give Heights a whole new corner there.
This is a public hearing. At this point, since it was all presented together, we'll take public comments on all of them at this point, because I don't know if we can actually really differentiate between the multiple resolutions and even the ordinance. So if anybody has any comment or question from the public regarding this project as presented, please come forward and state your name. And oh, we do have one already.
I don't have any, but if you haven't, fill out your name when you're up here.
Right.
Funding.
Oh, just a minute.
Cliff Johnson again, 1027 43rd and a half Avenue. It always comes down to parking. This is what we ran into in the central lofts, and we still run into today. When you discuss the shared parking with the tenants and the city, employees. I assume we'll be having meetings like this in the evening in the city hall. So isn't there going to be a conflict between employees parking in this shared space and tenants? How is that going to be resolved?
Right, so we will always have the 30 spaces in front of City Hall reserved for meetings for residents to come to during night meetings just like this. And staff in that area as well, and it may be that staff utilize the municipal parking ramp at the Fairview site just to provide more spaces for residents at night meetings.
I could just see, if unless there's proper signage, I could really see there being a conflict. If the assumption is if anybody's parking after 5 p.m., that could really be a problem.
Indeed, yes, we'll have to control and restrict access for night meetings with the electronic door on that entrance. There'll also be electronic mechanisms that can read the amount of vehicles that enter the space and indicate when it's full and not allow additional vehicles to come into it.
Okay. So anybody who's attending a meeting at the new City Hall, they will always be at the Fairview ramp?
No, attendees would be in the 30 spaces directly outside of City Hall.
I mean, like people like me.
No, yes, you. That's who I'm talking
Well,
about. Yeah.
if it's an electronic entrance, how would I get in?
We're working, I would let the developer comment, but there's a few systems that are being contemplated. A ticket that you would receive that's automatically validated, that lets you back out, or potentially validated in City Hall. We need to work out the nuances of that. I think an instantly validated ticket is efficient. However, it could lead to bad behavior for somebody securing a spot if there was no time associated or a validation process.
Okay. Are these, I assume I know the question, but I want to ask it anyways. I assume that all these parking spots for the tenants are what I would call voluntary? Nobody has to have a parking spot?
That's correct. So not mandated, but certainly being driven through sales and leasing, but not mandated.
Because that's kind of the problem we got with the Grand Loft, the Central Lofts. Is we have parking spaces, but nobody wants to rent them, so they park on the street, and it causes all kinds of problems for the city.
I would start that and then let the developer maybe provide additional commentary, but it's a different project being market rate as compared to affordable, and we know when given the choice in affordable facilities, we are seeing, a lot of the times the choice is not made to pay for the parking. It's assumed that this parking will be utilized in a different way.
How about people who are visiting the actual tenants? Where are they going to park?
A mix of opportunities. So the City Hall parking when not used for the City Hall. So weekends and nights is a potential outlet. Some designated spaces in the main balance as flex for visitors. On street is something that will happen on Gould and the surrounding neighborhood for visitors as well. No overnight parking, but it would be permitted that visitors could park on the street.
Yeah, I could see that.
And the Fairview ramp, probably the biggest outlet regionally. We're aware that it's very underutilized at the moment. So staff have completed an engineering study on that ramp where there was cameras placed to monitor traffic and see who exactly is using it and at what capacity. And we will have to rely on an asset that we're currently not using to its fullest potential.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't even know it's there.
Right. I think that is a big problem. And it's an opportunity for us to make that better and emphasize the use of that space.
Okay. I guess one of the concerns I have is people using the Heights Mall as parking. And I don't know if there's going to be a lot of signage or if they're required to put any more signage that says, they can't park here this is only for the mall parking and so on and so forth.
This project is not being required to do that. I think it's likely that we'll have to work through some management growing pains. But I think until it's a problem, we would work with the Heights Mall owner to see what we need to do. Towing is an option in that regard, but I know that the developer has a desire to even approach the mall owner if there could be any sort of shared arrangement, that would be mutually beneficial, maybe to provide visitor parking, but it's not being built into this project right now.
My concern is not being thought of ahead of time, affecting the businesses that are already there. That'd be unfair to them. is my concern. And one thing I'd like to see in the future, if we can't do it for this one, is whenever we have a new residential place being put up that's multifamily, especially if it's beyond 4 units, I'd really like to see some signage within a block or 2-block area, specifically specifying what our parking regulations are. Because a lot of people, they don't know. They don't really know. And I think a lot of people take it for granted that you can park overnight in the city of Columbia Heights, and you can't. And it creates more work for our police, more work for our plow people, more work for our fire people if they got to get through all that stuff. So I'd like to see that in the future. If we put on any new residential, that has to have some kind of signage within a block area stating what our parking is. The only other question I had was, it sounds like you made the comment about the mass transit, the availability of it. If we do have a lot of people who want to use the mass transit, I didn't see a spot in there, even a place for a bus enclosure, a bus shelter on the either side of Central, because if they're coming to work, they're also going to work, coming and going. Is that something that's been talked about or thought about?
So integrating a bus stop.
Well, there is one in front of Northeast right now, isn't there, in front of the Northeast Bank building? Or no?
No, not in front of the Northeast.
Okay.
It's in front of it is in the shopping mall.
So
And that's the transit hub, and it is considered the hub, and a lot of buses will do their turnaround and go back down.
So that would be, the tenants would be using that one then?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I think that's all the questions I got for now. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Amada Marcus Simula. I had a question about the parking as well. You explained about the evening parking for like a city council meeting, that there could be some shared space. But also I thought that there was going to be a community room in the new space as well. So would there be a way that if somebody was renting the community room, that they would know that their guests could also have some parking versus being asked to park at the ramp across the street?
I think it depends on a variety of things. I think we would entertain uses like that. I think the predominant outlet, again, would be the ramp for off business. When we looked at that space, we really looked at the current slate of operations for the city hall. We do have a community room integrated into there. However, I know early conversations don't have staff anticipating booking that out every week. I don't think we anticipate that use. And I think it's something that we could manage around in working with our partner, but don't have specific plans for non-council, planning commission, traffic. The typical commission meetings and council meetings are really what we've focused on. Again, coming back to the Fairview ramp as an asset that we can't overlook and do need to integrate into this overall plan as something that provides a tremendous opportunity to use something that's underutilized specifically for what it was designed. I mean, that ramp was to serve the entire central business district in this very way. So I think we're fortunate to have it and be able to utilize it.
So with using that ramp, I'm thinking that there'll be extra signage will be put up around the city so that they know that there's a parking ramp there.
We will need to do more to drive people to it. And I think we're just kind of exploring what signage opportunities might exist, or certainly if we have any sort of contractual relationship with any regional entity, that will drive people to that destination. But yeah, it's underutilized for a variety of reasons.
And I know another thing I've crossed at the light there, and I know it's not a city street, that Central isn't a city street, but if we're going to be driving a lot of pedestrian traffic to cross Central and 40th, specifically going to City Hall, I think that light is timed. It's very fast, and I'm able-bodied, and it's fast for me to walk across the street. So I think that if we're going to have the parking ramp is going to be the structure that we're driving people to park at and walk all the way over, then we need to make sure that seniors and everyone and children and people with strollers can get across the street safely to City Hall if that's where they're going to be parking. So just would like to know that can be looked at in this decision as well. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Dwayne Morrell, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm astounded at how the city develops its available space. And I don't even know where to begin. I can take you back 20 years to about the year 2000 and revamp the entire development process for all the municipal spaces that we've got and show you how to do it on a budget, under budget for what you've got, and utilize the space entirely different. I can't believe how complex that is, and how, do you understand putting that many people in the center of your city, what that's going to do for congestion? And if you listen to the explanations or the responses to the questions, how idealized everything is, I'm guessing is Fairview, is that the high rise that's across the street? Is that what that is?
It's a multiple story office building, kitty corner to the bank building, so at the northwest quadrant of the intersection.
So you got people commuting or walking quite a distance, kitty corner. So I don't know what you've got.
Go ahead.
One of the city's goals in the last few years has been walkability. So this would force the ramp to be used. We have already made changes to make the streets more walkable. We will look into the crossing, because I guess I wasn't aware of that it goes too fast. But as a city, we have promoted walkability, we have wanted walkability. Now it's time to live up to what we've been talking about. And if we have to use a ramp that's a kitty corner across the street, it's not that far away.
Do you know how dangerous 40th and Central is?
Like statistic-wise, no. I mean, I walk it. I've seen numerous people walk it.
Right.
I think where the danger comes in is where some people don't, and some cars, they don't follow the signals. If
right turn on red, probably, in my opinion, should be repealed by the state of Minnesota. Those people are just dangerous because they're looking this way, going that way, because they want to enter the flow of traffic at the earliest possible time. They don't care about the crosswalks. They don't care about who's actually there. They're looking for the earliest point of entering the flow of traffic, so they don't have to burn a lot of gas sitting at the stoplight.
I'm sure all options to ensure the safety of the walkability will be looked at.
Can I have a couple of minutes to give you my 20-year development plan that encompasses everything you've got? Grand Central Lofts is a 3-phase development at the old high school where the city sells the high school property to a developer and gets about $600,000 to $1 million for that property. The city then takes the $1 million and buys the Northeast Bank building with the plan to put in the city offices and the public library. The removal of the city offices from the existing city hall allows the police and fire departments to develop this property so that it functions for what they need into the future. So that leaves the Kmart site and the Matty Bowl site still to be developed. Do you see how that works? You have the Grand Central Lofts in a 3-phase development. That's fine. That's what they had up there. It took, how many years did it take to develop that property until they finished it? And now this gentleman here is telling you about the parking problems. You're going into congestion. You want to go away from congestion, provide the facilities, and make Columbia Heights an attractive place to move to. I think you're missing the point. I understand this is like throwing a wrench in the whole process, but I see this time and again. I tried to stop the Grand Central Lofts, but no one wanted to listen to me. I sat in the community development director's meeting with the then mayor, and he didn't want to hear it. He just wanted to sell the project to the people who attended the meeting. He didn't want to hear alternatives. I'm just amazed at how this all works out. But if you notice in my little plan there, you've accomplished everything you need. So if the fire and police need more space, that parking lot, let's see, well, we're right here. The parking lot to the west, or yes, to the west becomes some block building. And I can actually give you a plan where the fire trucks have their garages on Mill Street, so that they can come around and they don't have to stop and turn on the lights and back in. They just go from around the block, through the promenade down to Immersion Hall, and then into the back of their parking facility, and then out onto 40th when on an emergency call. I mean, you got so many possibilities and so few people offering opinions as to how this community can develop. Now, I'm just amazed. I just can't believe it. So, you got a lot of, what is it? I don't know, hullabaloo about nothing there. And that's amazing that you could come up with that plan. Thank you for listening.
Councilmember Nowinski, did you want to say? Okay, we can't go back and change what we've done in the past, what's been done in the past. We can't go back and tear down the public safety building. That would be ridiculous. We can't go back and do the same to the library. That would be also ridiculous. We have been putting money aside for this project for years, and we are not bonding. This is one of the times we are not bonding for a project this large of a project. And appreciate the staff that have been working on this, past council that started saving for this. It's because of that foresight we are able to put the money we have been saving for this project to this project that is presented to us tonight. We are not going out and borrowing money again for this project, whereas if we had built something across the street, or if we had tore this building down and rebuilt it here, we would have had to bond, and it would have cost way more than what we are paying for it right now.
Mayor, I hope you're addressing me.
Yes.
With the comment? Okay. Let me, I don't expect you to go back and tear everything down and redo it the way I was suggested. But what I'm saying is that there's a gap between the decision-making process and the availability of opinions as to what decisions you're going to make. And that's what the city is not taking into consideration. At the time of Grand Central Loft, I could have saved the city, what is it, $25 million, and probably reduced the development and had all of that as effectively for maybe $12 million, just by directing their attention to a different plan. But no one was interested. See, and I didn't know this was happening. And I've been sitting on the three-phase development with the city buying the Northeast Bank building for years. And you said that the city bought that building? And how much did the city pay for the building?
$2.8 million.
$2.8 million. Okay, so it's available for $1 million. What is it, 5 years ago that what was it, Jim Melkashevsky bought it? Because I remember sitting in the audience when the triangle was in question of whether or not the city owned the property or it went with the bank building. And Jim stood up and he said, I'll offer you $1 for it. I was going to outbid him because I know that triangle controls that property.
Well, we can't go back.
But I'm trying to show you that your decision-making process is flawed. And I'm trying to direct you to ask the public, and I've suggested that in that pamphlet. If you're making development projects or you got any ideas, submit a survey to the residents so that they can respond with their opinions so that you can get a better idea of what the public has in mind.
Aaron, we've been discussing this, how many,
Well, I think what you've illustrated is the comprehensive plan process, where we spent the better part of 2 years soliciting all of that feedback that resulted in objectives that are very, very clearly delivered by this project. This is a realization of all of that feedback, down to a T, every single element.
So Columbia Heights residents are going to move into that?
Yeah, that is part of the plan, as well as anyone else that's
Downtown
interested.
Minneapolis residents? Employees?
absolutely.
Potentially.
We'll take
We
anybody.
can't control who's gonna move in there.
Well, you have a target.
The developer has a target,
The
yes.
developer, you're right.
Yes.
Yeah. See, and this project, actually, because it's so comprehensive and expansive, it actually needs to be at the old Kmart site. And it can be one of several development projects there. See? And then that brewery, you still have Maddie's Bowl property for development of specialty brewing places or specialty commercial places. You have a mall.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks, Dwayne. Anybody else? Malcolm, you said you wanted to get up and say something, I thought? I thought, or was that for something else?
Public comment.
Public, okay, I'm sorry, okay. Anybody else for the public portion? All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Bob Lux. I'm with the Lattice, the development team, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time. I didn't want to lose the time, so I thought I would address some of these issues, including the garage door question.
Thank you.
First of all, I commend the city and the staff for taking the initiative over the last year and a half, because we and other developers actually have been looking at the site with the city and the staff for over a year and a half. I think our first meeting was in August of last year, of 2018. And we believe that the evolution that this project has gone through is helped us as a development team, and I think it'll be really a great long-term asset for the city. The complexity of the site is really, from our standpoint and the projects that we get involved with, is not very complex. There's items that have to have been figured out, which we believe that we figured out quite well. There's still some nuances that have to be worked through. There's really 3 elements or 4 elements of the project. There's the city hall, there's the coffee shop, there's residential, and there's parking. Maybe to a lot of the questions tonight have been directed toward the parking. And as Aaron mentioned, we have 346 parking stalls in total. The computation that was being done kind of discounted the 30 stalls that are the flex stalls, the stalls that are going to be dedicated toward the city's use. And the way that we're planning on managing that is with electronic access equipment. Ski Data makes it. We've used it in parking garages in Minneapolis. We're currently putting it in, or it just actually went live today down in Rochester, Minnesota, in a 350-unit apartment project that we're finishing right across from St. Mary's. And so you manage everybody that goes in. You can only put 30 people into the, if it's full, it'll show that it's full. But in addition to the actual access equipment, and it's not just a gate, it's a door, so that it's a garage door. But there'll also be a electronic indicator board, so basically a large television screen that'll say that if there's a city function at night, city parking only, or if council members or EDA members only, can park here during that time. At 8 o'clock, when they leave, then it's available for others to come in and park. What we're trying to do is to, as efficiently as we can, manage those 346 stalls so that we're not overbuilding and we're not underbuilding. And out of the 266 units, typically the building will at any one time, at maximum occupancy, it can be 95 or 96% occupied, but the people that'll actually be in the building is probably in the 80 to 85% max. So that there's always the number of people that are gone and that are, somewhere else other than at home at any one time. So we actually believe our parking ratio here is approximately 1.4 to 1 in the unit count. We feel that that is absolutely on target. Having the parking, the city parking ramp be as close as it is, we believe is, it wasn't necessarily foresight, but it was certainly an opportune situation to take advantage of. I do share the concern of the citizen where they talked about going across both Central and 40th. We have to look at that. We've never had anybody get injured on any of our sites, and we build in downtown Minneapolis where people, you can have an issue. I think we have to look at that with the city to make sure that that the timing is correct, the indications are right, and the signage is all correct. There's been a lot of projects that I've done over the years that I've gotten really excited about. I've never been more excited about a project than this. This is, I think, a unique time to take a first-ring suburb, that is fully built out and really bring it into the next, kind of next decades. And as far as the number, and from our vantage point, the number of folks from Columbia Heights that we would expect approximately a third of the residents in this building to actually come that are current residents in Columbia Heights. We believe one of the opportunities, and we just finished a project similar to this in New Hope, as many of you know, which almost exactly a third came from the city of New Hope, where people, they want an opportunity. They want to get out of their home, whether or not they've aged in place or that they just don't want a home any longer. And this gives them a great opportunity to continue to live in Columbia Heights without having to move to another city. The other 2/3 of the building will be occupied by virtually everybody. It'll be occupied by people that are currently living in Fridley and working at Medtronics. It'll be people that are living downtown, that are living northeast, want to save some money and move a little bit north. It's and we do see, and I applaud the folks that are working on the brewery and the arcade to the north of us. Those are what we want to be around. The Heights Theater is what we want to be around. The Dairy Queen is a phenomenal asset. Aaron, the Pocket Park, is kind of looked as a rectangular, but it's actually, there's an arm that goes in front of the cafe, which we believe is going to be really nice. We pulled the building back specifically for that. And between our architects at Dorn Architects and Leo Daly, who's the architect for the city, I think we've ended up with a great plan. So to directly answer your question on the garage door, yes, first of all, we'll end up using a high-speed hydraulic door. So it's not the one with the track on the top where it grinds away. Right. High speed, it rolls, and it's on isolators. And then the wall between there, between the unit and there, will be double insulated. I mean, that's, as well as the ceiling above, because normally you have problems with the transmission going through the concrete much more than you do from side to side. They're all thoughts, we think about these all day long because we get complaints. Right. So
I figured you did.
Yeah.
I had forgotten to ask just in case.
No, I'm glad you did. I think maybe to highlight the utilization of the parking is really important. And where having the electronic board, and I don't know if it's going to be the size of the screen, but it's going to be not small at the public entrance, so we can tell people what is going on. This is a time to park here, or this is not a time to park here. And so we think that it's a great time, or great ability to use current day technology to be able to do it. And the ticket validation program is all relative. I mean, it's common to do at this point. So I'm available for questions.
Yes, I'm familiar with the ticket validation. I've gone downtown and you have to validate your parking to get the free parking for 2 hours or whatever it is. And simple process, you just have to remember to bring the ticket in to get it stamped. Otherwise, you do pay to get out. So, Councilmember Biskins.
I was just you mentioned Amada Marquez had mentioned the crossing that street, the difference between that intersection and in downtown Minneapolis or anywhere in Minneapolis is MnDOT owns and controls our light here, whereas Minneapolis controls their lights. I mean, they have a nice, smoother system. You know, you just go south of the railroads and you can turn left in 30 seconds. Here, it can take quite a while, but it is very, very short. I've experienced it myself trying to cross with my bike. By the time I got ready to go on a Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, it had already turned red. So that is, I'm hoping MnDOT cooperates and they change the timing on that light.
Well, Councilmember, it's a good point, and we have worked with MnDOT often, and we, you know, I'm sure the city works with MnDOT. I mean, they want the same type of development to occur as what we're doing here, because having density put close to a transit location, the way that we are, you know, less than a block away, that's just an ideal situation.
I'll say normally the light is sufficient. I don't walk that fast necessarily, and I do have plenty of time. It would be nice to have an island in the middle with a button, though, for those that can't quite make it across. I don't think there is one right now.
Does it not give the 30 seconds or whatever if you push the walk button and wait for it?
That afternoon I was...
Gives you like 20 seconds, I think. But I just used it last week, and I had plenty of time to make it across. And then, but the island in the middle would be ideal. They do that downtown, and I assume we'd have to talk to MnDOT to get that added.
So MnDOT has requested the traffic study, and it's in draft form, and we can deliver that to MnDOT for review, and I think that's one of the items that we should accentuate. The traffic study is not a requisite for this project. They know that we are in the process, or rather, Alatus is in the process of completing it, and would like to review it for these very types of conversations.
And the only problem when I had when I'm crossing that street is when emergency vehicles come, those lights turn red almost immediately, and you barely get started and the lights will change. So that is an issue, but if we had that island in the middle, that could maybe cover that for those who get stuck out there. Anybody else from the council have any questions? Anybody from the public have any comments or questions regarding this? Come forward, Cliff.
I just got one more question about the parking.
Sure.
If somebody...
Could you do it at the podium, please?
With the electronic parking like we're talking about, if somebody violates that, who's in charge of actually taking care of that? I mean, if a car takes an electronic ticket and parks there 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, is it the city police, or who's going to actually take care of that?
I think we still need to figure that out, but if there's a violation, I think we would treat it like any other parking ordinance, and we could remove a vehicle with towing. I mean, that's the...
Yeah, I'm just wondering who makes that call.
It's a good question. We really need to work out some of the nuances.
There are some details that have to be worked out. I assumed since it is privately owned, it would be the private company that would take care of that.
Yeah, I would think so too.
I wouldn't say for sure. Things have been changing as we discussed this over the last year and a half. So.
I just trying to think as forward as we can, because anticipate all the problems you can have based on problems we had in the past.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. We're still discussing the city hall.
He had it first.
Okay.
It's questions regarding this development.
Oh, okay.
Land unit development?
Sure, come on forward.
It's not on my list.
Uh-oh.
The only thing who am I? I'm Malcolm Watson, 1717 49th Avenue, Northeast Columbia Heights, formerly 3904 Hayes and 3823 2.5 Street. That's after World War II. Anyway, I find it's really beyond my comprehension how much development is proposed here. And of course, my question is, as it was back in the days when I was city manager, how much are we expending from federal grants or other type grants Is this something of a tax increment financing? That's what we used to discuss. See, I retired in 1977. At that time, we still had the business places all along Central. And after I left, we took the property from Gould to 42nd as planned as part of our development, and we took out all the businesses, and the whole thing was changed. But in '77, we were out of debt. We had built proper structures to house all of our departments. We'd installed all the necessary sewer and water systems, arranged for the coverage for our citizens into the foreseeable future. And it was all a very simple program. And I just am amazed at what is being proposed here. It goes so far beyond anything that we comprehended back in those days. And I'll be interested to see what impact it will have on our taxpayers over the years. What have we committed ourselves to? How far into the future is it? Being up in my 90s, I'm not all that concerned about what happens 20 years from now. Of course, being Irish, I don't want to bet on it. Anyway, it's a real interesting plan here. We didn't have the 7-story building, none of that down there, when I departed in 1977. And I had one rather humorous thing I wanted to share with you. At our last meeting, we discussed the census. And I looked in my alumni letter from International Falls, and they commented about Malcolm Watson was the city manager of Columbia Heights from the early days after World War II, after college, and that the Census Bureau sent out a questionnaire. The questionnaire was rather straightforward. Have you had a change in population? I said, yes, we did, from about 8,000 to 17,000, 1950 to 1960. And then they said, to what do you attribute your change in population? You don't ask an Irishman a question like that. I simply responded, a noisy freight train that goes through town at 5 a.m. They said, I thought you should know, Mr. Watson, that your response to our inquiry is posted on our bulletin board. But there's so many things. See, our growth, we were up to 24,000 when I left here in '77. And some of this change, so much of it came about after I left the city. When I left, we had housed all of our departments. We had all our sewer and water systems completed, and we were set up well into the future. We are completely out of debt, and it's a different world out there. We're spending money well in advance of when we were going to be able to pay it. And I'm intrigued by the tax increment financing. That is assuming that the tax value of what's being planned exceeded the tax value of what it is replacing, and that money was to be used to pay off the bonds that somebody is going to have to sell, or the federal government is putting forth for us. I want to know about the tax increment financing, and how long into the future are we indebting ourselves, okay?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Sure. I'll take a stab at that. It's a lot to unpack, but so tax increment financing, certainly I want to designate as a separate issue between land use approvals, and that's what we're doing this evening. The project has been approved as a tax increment financing district, so we will be utilizing TIF to make this project work. We will, however, not bond for this project, so the city is not going to put up the funds on the front end. So the developer is actually going to cash flow the project from the beginning with their own resources, and the tax increment that's generated as part of this project will be utilized over a period of likely 20 plus years to pay back the portion of TIF eligible costs. The current value of the property as it stands will be somewhere around $5 million all in, with an anticipated end value in excess of $60 million. So there's quite an increment on the project. There's a lot more that we could talk about with TIF, but I think it is important to note that certainly the city's not fronting the money for this project.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. Then I will have a motion to close the public hearing for all the first three projects, and then we'll do resolution on each of the individual ones separate.
Yeah, follow the agenda, ma'am.
I will do my best. So if I can have a motion to close the public hearing first.
Move to close the public hearing for resolutions 2021-21, 2020-22, and 2020-23, approving easement vacations, preliminary plat, and final plat for property located in the city of Columbia Heights, Minnesota.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskin, second by Councilmember Nowinski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then moving on. The first is resolution number 2020-21. If I could have a motion, please.
Move to approve resolution.
Oh, let's waive the reading first.
Move to waive the reading of resolution number 2020-21, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nowinski, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And the second one?
Move to approve resolution number 2020-21, approving an easement vacation for property located in the city of Columbia Heights, Minnesota, subject to certain conditions of approval.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nowinski, second by Councilmember Biskins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And then resolution number 2020-22. I need a move to waive the reading, please.
Move to waive the reading of resolution number 2020-22, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nowinski, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then I need a motion to approve, please.
Move to approve resolution number 2020-22, approving an easement vacation for property located in the city of Columbia Heights, Minnesota, subject to certain conditions of approval.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nowinski, second by Councilmember Biskins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Move to
Go ahead.
move to waive the reading of resolution number 2020-23, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskins, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move to approve resolution number 2020-23, approving the preliminary and final plat for a planned unit development district located at 3989 Central Avenue Northeast, 3889 Central Avenue Northeast, 961 Gould Avenue Northeast, and 950 40th Avenue Northeast.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskins, second by Councilmember Nowinski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The agenda does ask for a closing of the public hearing. This is your last chance. Anybody actually want to talk regarding to this rezoning of this property? Okay. All right, can I have a motion to close?
Move to close the public hearing and waive the reading of ordinance 1660, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskins, second by Councilmember Mergen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move to set the second reading of ordinance 6060, being an ordinance pertaining to the rezoning of certain property located at 3989 Central Avenue Northeast, 3889 Central Avenue Northeast, 961 Gould Avenue Northeast, and 950 40th Avenue Northeast from Mixed Use Development District to PUD Planned Unit Development District Number 220-01 for February 24th, 2020 at approximately 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskins, second from Councilmember Novinsky. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So the second reading will be at our next meeting on February 24th. Thank you. Thank you for all your help. Thank you for everybody that came regarding rail works and for the what is it?
The arcade.
The arcade, that's it.
Assisted
I'm thinking
living.
entertainment center. No, that's not quite right, but it's because of all these developments. This is actually an exciting time to be part of the city. We're seeing new stuff coming in and appreciate all the work that people are willing to take a chance on our city. Thank you. We have no items under consideration, and we need a report of the City Council at this time. Councilmember Biskins, did you want to start?
Sure. Not too many this time, but I met with Kathy Kelly, our superintendent of our school district. She gave me an informal tour of our new band room up at the high school, which is really cool, very nice. The only thing I wish they had done is taken a video of the kids when they first entered it, because from what they had to what they have now is night and day. So that was pretty exciting. I also got a preliminary tour of their Performing Arts Center, all new seats in there. It's so nice. And the new sound system that the school will actually own. They've got a really nice elevator that's going to take people who can't walk up the stairs, that'll lift them up onto the stage. Some really nice improvements, plus the new stage that they're working on in the gym. So we're going to have some really cool spaces to look at. They're going to be announcing their to the public the tour when everything's finished, so that was pretty exciting. I met with a resident, Joe Schulander. He's a rail yard enthusiast, and I was prompted to meet with him from Dolores Strand, who's in our Sister City program. She had talked about a gentleman years ago, John Hemmick, that wanted to have an overlook over the rail yard that we have by Lomiaki Park. And I talked to Kevin about it. He wasn't sure we had the easement for that part, but I thought I'd go look, because I never can. You have to pull the vines away in the wintertime with no leaves to actually see, and it's the sorting area for the trains, and I got a very interesting education on it. But discovered that even though it was a great idea to have an overlook, it would be great to pull people in. We don't own the berm where people walk along the fence. I don't know how many people are familiar with it. So it kind of died on the vine, literally. But it was really interesting. And for folks, this is the time to go over if you're interested in trains. The vines, once you get through, there's lots of tree trunks in the way, but you can see the sorting yard, which is really quite interesting once you understand how it works. Then I'm the liaison now for the Planning Commission. It was a 3.5-hour great meeting. Lots of questions, lots of interesting comments that were made at the time. And then I also attended our City Service and Winter Expo at the library last Saturday. We had a pretty good turnout, lots of interesting things. Staff shared what the new developments are in the city, where they're about the infrastructure and also about redevelopment and new businesses coming in. So that was it. Thanks.
Councilmember Mershon?
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Novinsky?
I went to the City Expo as well, and it was well attended, lots of good questions and presentations. So.
All right, thank you. I was able to attend it's called the Community Connection. It was held in Minneapolis. Minneapolis holds this every year. It's a place to get good ideas, and they let people from other cities like Columbia Heights in there for some reason. And I was actually able to take our census representative, Katie Jacobs, and she got some great ideas from them for census, and so to share with residents. And she was at the City Services Expo too, got to wear her fancy shirt she got for free from the Minneapolis Connections Conference. And in case you hadn't heard, I fell on the bus. The bus stopped suddenly, and And KT will never ride the bus again with me. But, so it's been an exciting week. And, and I also got to attend it was called the pre-grand opening party for a friendly resident who decided to put his business here in Columbia Heights. He sells sports memorabilia, and he's over at 4110 Central Avenue in Suite 201. Another new business coming here, and he's excited to be in Columbia Heights, and he's been an online service for a couple years, and so he's just expanding into an actual storefront. So thank you for everybody willing to come here. City Manager.
Thank you. Just one thing, I want to put a plug in and make a request for all of our residents. We have commission and committee appointments that will be made in March. If you're at all interested, we have a Planning Commission, Library Board, Parks and Recreation, Traffic Commission, and Charter Commission, all with terms expiring. So if you have any interest, now is a great time to get involved in the community. Our application is on our website. I know there was a link on our Facebook page as well. And then Nicole Tingley, our city clerk, will certainly answer questions or take applications as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, City Attorney. Thank you. Thank you. Last item is the community forum. At this time, individuals, they don't have to be resident, may address the City Council about any item not included on the regular agenda. Speakers are requested to come to the podium, sign their name and address on the form for the Council Secretary's record, and limit their comments to 5 minutes. Individuals are asked to state their name for the record, and the City Council will listen to the brief remarks, ask clarifying questions, and if needed, request staff to follow up or direct the matter to be added to an upcoming agenda. Generally, the City Council will not take official action on items raised at the community forum at the meeting in which they are raised. We have...
Did you have anything to add? Are you good? All right. Okay, Dwayne, I had your name for one thing. Yep.
Dwayne Morrell. Toward the end of January, I got one of these beautiful blaze orange vehicle violation tickets. I was talking to my neighbor. She said, why did they do that? The vehicle didn't have any parts missing. It wasn't being used for parts of the vehicle. It wasn't being sold. But it did have an expired ticket, license. And so she said, well, what about all the other cars? And without going into it, I just took a trip around to the store and towards downtown Columbia Heights, and I found 4 cars that may qualify for the same thing. Now, I'm not saying that I've been singled out. I'm not complaining because I understand the process, and it was in violation from the invalid tag. I was in the process of getting rid of it, but the people I was talking to needed it until spring. Well, that wasn't going to be acceptable. So I got rid of it, and I called the police department to find out exactly what the costs would be for a vehicle in the same situation, any vehicle. They didn't know, so they sent me to Anoka County. I called the clerk of court. They didn't know. They said, check the website. I checked the website. It said no fees listed. I went back to the clerk of court. They couldn't figure it out. Go to the ticket window where you pay taxes, or tickets. She didn't know. And they finally ended up with the supervisor who said, oh yeah, someone called yesterday, me, and she was able to find it, and they did go in and find it. Now the citation was $175. The question is, how much is the towing fee, and how much would be the storage fees in the impound lot, leading up to forfeiture of the vehicle where it gets put up for the sale. Now, I have found someone who will take the vehicle for free. Is anyone interested in the city helping the residents reduce the cost of a vehicle in the same situation? I mean, I can put you in contact with them. And they may even buy some of the vehicles. But see, that's the process. We've got this money generating operation going on. We're not helping the residents. We're generating revenue. So then I did another search because I go to this recycle center on Saturday and I help out as much as I can.
Thank you.
And I usually travel 39th. And starting at about the entrance to the old Keystone factory to the roundabout, there have to be 20 or 30 vehicles stored on the street, 2 to 3 deep. Almost the only thing they need to do now is start stacking them. So it appears that there are cars parked overnight on the street because I could see the plow line where the snow gets pushed up against the cars, and it makes it dangerous for me on a bike to go there because there's not enough space for me to allow the other cars to pass by. And some of the vehicles are stacked, parked 2 and 3. It's on the easement. I remember an ordinance where residents could not park their vehicle on the easement. And junk vehicles. I know they got junk vehicles. There's one van with no parts on the front end. That's been sitting there. There were 2 vehicles with both their wheels taken off on the right side. They were sitting there for more than a week. This is for 96 hours. I just think, and I've complained about it before when the previous city manager was here, and he protested that it was jobs. That's why they didn't enforce the ordinance on those people. But I remember that businesses had to stay within the confines of their property. If they had vehicles, they had to be in a fenced area, and that fence had to be blocked. Now they're parking them all over the place, wherever they can, and it doesn't look good. And so I'm saying, why enforce the ordinance on me for a vehicle that's not appearing to be, it's only technically in violation, but doesn't appear bad, but not clean up the 39th Avenue. And it's been there for years.
Dwayne, that's a good question. Maybe you sit down with Lenny or some of the police.
Mayor,
because they're the ones passing out the tickets. That's something we can have them contact you if you would like.
Let me tell you why it doesn't work. If they're not responding to you after I tell you about the situation, how is he supposed to respond to me? I didn't hire him. Can't fire him. I can't censure him. I can't do anything to him. He's supposed to know what that is and make certain that the officials enforce the ordinance evenly.
Dwayne, and he can explain how the process. We don't have time every night of the week to go around every street and check. But he can explain.
But it's been years.
Yeah, he can explain. Yeah, he hasn't been chief for that long.
He inherited the responsibility.
He
That's
did.
right.
He can explain his process, what he tells his officers to do. Ticketing is not the high priority, but
that's correct.
So,
because last week, our last meeting, I mentioned about the high speeds on Reservoir Boulevard.
Correct.
And I saw an increase of police presence on the boulevard. And I found a speed bump on Lincoln Terrace. That was noticeably ground down by the vehicles traveling too fast across it. I still think the simple solution is a stop sign. But my final point is this. 4 years ago, I brought to the city council that the impound lot was not in compliance with the ordinance for storage, vehicle storage. 2 years ago, Fire Chief Gary Gorman said the process had been started and they were waiting for an impact statement to be completed. How long does it take when I get 96 hours for this? How long does it take for that to be brought into compliance? And why the difference in level of enforcement?
Dwayne, can you talk to Aaron just for a little bit right after the meeting, or you can go out right now and talk, but he can maybe explain and get some of this started, and you can get the information down so you can help him find out some of that.
And Mayor, what I'm trying to do is that exclusionary comment that you have under community forum.
Yes.
You people are elected by the city. You're the one interacting with the administrative staff on a regular basis. You're the ones who are supposed to know. We pose the situations to you. You should be getting the answers back to us. You're the authorities. You hire and fire them. I have no authority with it.
We hire the professionals. Kelly hires the professionals. So that's what they're there for. We are just regular citizens that live in this city.
Mayor Schmidt?
Yes.
Can I say something? One, I just want you to know that they don't just single you out, and we are enforcing, but we gave out, when you talked about why are all these cars around that haven't had tickets, Eric mentioned our Captain Eric Johnston. They put out 1,100 citations last year for cars that are parked, don't have their tabs, so you may not see them all over, but they are doing the work. Second, you can do like I do this weekend. I like to drive through the industrial area to see what's going on. When I have concerns, I call the police department, and that's their job to go out and talk to the owners of the properties, and we do our best. It's always been an issue. I remember watching this council meeting when City Council member Bruce Narwaki was on there. It was constantly coming up as an issue to deal with the industrial area. So we continue to work on it. We were hoping with the street improvements that things would be better, but we still have to work on it. So if you see something that you're not happy with and you're concerned about, you just do like I do and others, and you call the police department, and we try to enforce it as best we can.
Thank you, Dwayne. We need to have other people come forward. Thank you.
Is Rachel not here?
No,
anymore?
Rachel
She's
left
gone.
already.
Okay, perfect, come on up.
Hello, Rachel James had to leave to take kids home to put them into bed, so she asked if I could speak for her. She wanted to let you know that First Lutheran Church has a pancake breakfast this Sunday, which is February 16th. It's from 8:30 to 12:30. And the pancake breakfast, it's $5 per person, and it is benefiting Hope for Youth, which is a non-religious, nonprofit organization that provides services to youth 16 years old to 24 who are experiencing homelessness. They cover Anoka County and are working to bring services to Columbia Heights. Again, the breakfast is $5 per person, cash or check, and the breakfast includes pancakes, sausages, eggs, coffee, and orange juice. So please come down to First Lutheran Church for the pancake breakfast on Sunday morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
As long as we're going to, KT Jacobs, 4104 Monroe, as long as we're going to talk about parking, I just wanted to ask the council again, as I have for the past year and a half, can we please get a sign up on the ramp on 40th Avenue that states that it is municipal or city parking, and also hopefully we'll see some signs on Central Avenue that will direct people to that facility as well as the municipal lot. Parking on another note, we recently saw come before the council some issues with the employee parking for Bobby and Steve's up on the hill, and that was to have been resolved. I noticed driving by there, not this snowfall, but one back, that there were cars parked up there with snow just this deep on them, so clearly indicating that those are not employee vehicles. They're probably being parked up there again for other reasons, but either employees are leaving them up there for a long period of time. It had been quite some time, and they had a good 6, 8 inches or more of snow on top of them, and it was not a fresh snowfall. So just asking that that be followed up on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like that followed up on.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
That was one of the things that we had said.
Anybody else? All right, then, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Biskin, second by Councilmember Merjan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.